Skip it up and that up. First and foremost, I got to give a huge shout out to Pat, aka Pat the NES Punk, and Ian over at the Completely Unnecessary podcast. I love their podcast. I go to the Pat's YouTube channel all the time to check out their uploads, and I strongly suggest you do too. I'll have a link to Pat's YouTube channel below in the description. They have a normal podcast as well. I like to watch the videos over on YouTube because he takes like snippets from the podcast and separates them per subject, and that's how I watch the podcast. So they have awesome stuff, and I got a lot of info from about the Coleco Chameleon from those guys, and I strongly suggest you check out their YouTube channel. Well, anyway, why the shout out to Pat and Ian? What's going on? Well, I have more info about the Coleco Chameleon, and shockingly, it's not good. But let me give you some backstory about what happened between Mike Kennedy, the president of Retro VGS, that's the company behind the Coleco Chameleon, and I. Now, if you remember, about mid-February, I was on vacation in Texas visiting family, and I was going to try to work while I was down there, but the situation, there was just too much noise and I just couldn't make videos. I had the chance to make one video for the entire week and change I was away, and that video was about the Coleco Chameleon. That was titled "The Coleco Chameleon is Unintentional Snake Oil, Don't Buy It." And it was more so an opinion piece on why I thought it's a bad idea to release a new, quote-unquote, cartridge-based system in 2016. Well, Mike got wind of it, Mike Kennedy over at Retro VGS, and he didn't like it. And I found out that he was going to try to flag my video down. So I proactively sent him an email. Wasn't a particularly nice one. I mean, I didn't, swear at him or anything, but I was just like, you taking down my video would be a bad idea. So we got into a back and forth, and it ended with if I would give their product a chance that he wouldn't flag my video down. Fine. Okay. Hey, who knows? He may have, sent me a loaner and it would have been fantastic and I would have thought differently of it. So I'm like, fine, if you want me just to actually try out the product or see some other stuff about it, okay, I still have a bad taste in my mouth about it, but fine, if that's what we settle on, and we don't have to get into a spat back and forth and all that, I'd rather just settle it now. So we stopped at that. Well, then a couple days later, Pat and Ian had a video on the Coleco Chameleon as well, and their video had damning evidence in it. I'm going to show you some photos now that they had, and you'll see why I say it's damning. So Exhibit A as to why the New York Toy Fair showing of the Coleco Chameleon is shady is the ports in front for the controllers. There's no ports. The controllers are hardwired into the system, which, okay, you could give a billion reasons as to why that is. Oh, it's a dev kit, yada, yada, yada. But why would you show something so shoddy at the New York Toy Expo? Why wouldn't you just put a USB port in front and plug? I mean, you're using the Wii U third-party controllers. Why wouldn't you have just USB ports in front? It just smelled wrong that this was the way they were showing the system, where they had controllers hardwired onto the motherboard of the supposed console. But let's move on. This is the least offensive thing that they showed there. Damning evidence piece number 2 here. Now, if you look at the back of the Retro VGS, it's using those, and I've used them before with Super Nintendo's and Sega Genesis consoles, that universal third-party power adapter where it has both the plugs for the Super Nintendo and the Sega Genesis, and it has the Super Nintendo piece plugged into it. Also, too, now let's zoom in here. Take a look at the top at the Coleco Chameleon. I keep on calling it the Retro VGS. The Coleco Chameleon, and look at the cord that it's using for video. It's using the proprietary Nintendo cord, the Nintendo AV out that they've used on the Super Nintendo, N64, and GameCube. They stopped using it with the original Wii. Now look at the bottom at an SNES Junior. Look at the placement of the power input and the AV input, or output I should say, on the SNES Junior. It's in the same spots. They used an SNES Junior motherboard in the Coleco Chameleon and tried to pawn it off as it was an actual new prototype for the Coleco Chameleon. That was their prototype motherboard. That was their prototype console at the NY Toy Fair. Now, you may say, hey, Rich, maybe they decided to use those plugs. What's the big deal? Why would a company who's building a prototype, why would they not use a generic video output or an HDMI output? Why would they use a specific AV output that was custom made for Nintendo consoles. It wouldn't be financially viable. They would rather use HDMI, something generic, or just like the yellow, white, and red AV outputs. That would make more sense, not using something proprietary from Nintendo. So again, another huge red flag here. Now, probably and arguably the most damning piece of evidence against the Coleco Chameleon is this shot right here from the NY Toy Fair in New York City. Is that, let's take a look what's going on with the prototype here. Now, first thing is that you have an SNES cartridge connector. It's plain as day. If any of you have seen an SNES, you could probably see that right away. It's very familiar. But the other interesting thing, which is a huge red flag, is look behind the console that they have this thing that's heavily covered with electrical tape. WTF, what the fuck is that about? Now, I was going to put these pictures side by side, but this is easier because it just, they're widescreen, and me trying to put them side by side, it just wouldn't have worked out, and you'll be able to see. Now, someone who was smart, a very smart person, got a Atari Jaguar shell and the guts of an SNES Junior, and retrofitted the guts of the SNES Junior inside of the Atari Jaguar shell. And look what it looks like. Here's a picture. Ta-da! There it is. There is an SNES Junior motherboard inside of an Atari Jaguar shell, and it looks just like the Coleco Chameleon prototype that was covered in duct tape at the NY Toy Fair. I mean, how could you deny any of this, Retro VGS, Mike Kennedy? How could you say that we're slandering you and we're lying about this? I mean, unless you're blind or a fucking idiot, you could tell what you did. It was smoke and mirrors. It was hocus pocus. It was intentional snake oil that you were trying to dish out at the NY Toy Fair. Now, of course, the Retro VGS team tried to damage control everything that happened at the NY Toy Fair and all the pictures, so on and so forth. And they delayed their Kickstarter saying, oh my goodness, there was so much demand for our product that we want to go back to the drawing board again and make sure we really refine it. AKA they got scared, their tail went between their legs because they got called out with a bullshit prototype, and they knew they needed to go back to the drawing board and no one would support their Kickstarter. So just recently, they uploaded this picture, which is now gone by the way, showing a clear Atari Jaguar case with a new prototype of the Coleco Chameleon. Okay, and it looks legit. If you know, I am not an engineer by any means, and I will not make it like I am one, but, you know, it looks like, okay, you look at the motherboard in there, it looks like you have these two big processors. One looks like it could be the CPU, the other one looks like it could be the graphics processor. All right, here it is. It's a legit prototype from the Retro VGS team. Bravo, boys and girls, you did a good job. Oh, wait, no, you didn't. Now, here is the picture of the Coleco Chameleon see-through prototype again, next to a picture of an internal capture card, a video capture card called the HiCap 50B CCTV DVR capture card. Now, you're probably wondering why I'm showing a picture of a capture card next to the Coleco Chameleon. Take a look inside the Coleco Chameleon again, and then take a look at that capture card. Look where the chips are placed. Look where the capacitors are placed. They took a capture card board because they thought it looked like it could be a motherboard of a video games console, slapped it in there, and made a fake prototype. Look where the capacitors are. Look where the chips are. Look where everything is placed. It's exactly that. There's no way you could deny it. Every single chip, every single capacitor, every single processor that's on the capture card is also inside of the Coleco Chameleon. So unless there's some insanely convenient coincidence where they have a motherboard that looks identical to this capture card, they made another bullshit prototype. This is the third bullshit prototype that Coleco Chameleon has made, or the Retro VGS team, I should say, has made. And before you say, oh, Rich, maybe it's just a strange coincidence, as soon as the team over at Atari Age called them out on this, they took this picture down from their Facebook page because they're trying to damage control. Unfucking believable. Now, to Mike Kennedy and the team over at Retro VGS, you could threaten to take down videos all day. You can try to censor articles. You could take down pictures, do whatever you want to do. But that would be the worst thing you could do, because the more you try to censor, the more people in this community are going to get pissed because everyone is enraged at the Retro VGS Coleco Chameleon team to begin with. You need to come forward, and one of two things. You either need to apologize and say, yeah, you caught us. We were trying, we just don't have the resources right now, and we put together a prototype to try to cover our asses, and it's not real. Or you need to explain yourselves and explain what the hell is going on. Because right now, your reputation is in the toilet. And the last thing you want to do right now is try to censor people. Explain yourselves and don't hide behind taking videos down and taking articles down. Because if you want to ruin any chance, which I don't know if there's any chance this thing could be successful now with how much damning evidence is against the Coleco Chameleon. If you want any chance of having any success with this thing, you either need to apologize or explain what the hell is going on, because right now the Retro VGS Coleco Chameleon team looks like liars, and they look unreputable, and they look terrible. This is Rich of Review Tech USA signing out. Have a good one.